Welcome to another one of our application videos. We have just been looking at Philippians chapter 2, verses 5 to 8, which is a wonderful passage and a real privilege for myself to be able to unpack it for you. And there's so much we could talk about from it, but I'm joined by, as ever, by Christine. Thanks for joining me today. And maybe, I guess, in what I said, I was very upfront with the fact that this is doctrine, this is theology. And I suppose for some people thinking, well, that sounds a bit grand, there's all this doctrine and theology. You know, I just love Jesus. Isn't Jesus enough? Do I actually have to go into all this doctrine and theology? What would you say to someone that responds like that?
I think we can get a bit scared by the words doctrine and theology, and actually they're just words that describe who Jesus is, what he's like, how he interacts with us, and they're kind of like labels for that, really. And of course all of that is about our knowledge of God and who he is, and we don't separate Jesus from God the Father and God the Spirit either, do we? So no, doctrine and theology are important because they're really going to help us get to know God as we study.
I mean, we talk about having a relationship with God, and just like any relationship, I suppose, isn't it? That picture of like the more we get to know someone, you know, the deeper our relationship gets with them, and that's what we're really talking about when we're talking about doctrine and theology. They're kind of big, as you say, can be scary words, but it's actually just getting to know God more, and that's something that fuels our worship.
Yeah,
Well,
absolutely. And a passage like this one is just incredible, isn't it? I think, you know, our first response to something like this may be, oh, there are things in there I don't understand, but isn't it wonderful? Isn't it beautiful? And it inspires worship in us. And the more we know Jesus, the more we know about him and what he does, that also inspires that kind of worship in us, doesn't it?
Absolutely. So maybe in your groups, how does that sound to you when you talk about doctrine and theology? Are you the type of person that say, oh, that's not really for me? Or maybe you're very motivated. Discuss like where you're at with that. The second question I've got for you is, I talked a lot about Jesus is Lord. That's right there in the passage. And maybe in your groups discuss, what does that look like in practice? Maybe there's some of the things that we were unpacking last week about what does it look like to be obedient to him, to serve others. What does Jesus is Lord look like for you in practice? I mean, it's a very grand thing to say, but is there areas of his lordship where you need to put him first? What does that look like in the workplace? What does that look like in your family life? What does that look like in your conduct, the way you are with friends, or that sort of thing? Maybe you want to think about that. What does Jesus is Lord look like in practice? And then I guess thirdly, Christine, what if someone is wanting to take some first steps in understanding theology, what help is there? Where would we point them to understand more or get into doctrine and theology and that sort of thing?
Well, of course, there are lots of books. There are lots of theology books. But actually, a really nice way in, I think, is the New City Catechism, which comes as an app that you can have on your phone. And you can do it on a daily basis. It asks a question and then gives you the answer, but it encourages you to learn the answer. It's just a couple of sentences, so it unpacks theology every day. There's a different thing that it's talking about. So
there you get like sort of bite-sized chunks of theology.
Absolutely.
What does the Bible say about this? What's the answer to this kind of question? And it helps you to grasp that. And there's a kids version as well.
There's a kids version, and the adult version is in just everyday English as well, and it's not using lots of long words.
So there you go. That's one idea. Maybe you've got other ideas. Maybe share it in your groups. What have you found helpful to study the Bible, to understand it more? And as Christine has been saying there, that's not an academic exercise. This is helping one another to get to know God more, who we're going to be worshipping and enjoying for eternity. So let's dive in more and more to the adventure of knowing him through studying his word, being led by his Spirit in that, and reaping the benefits in our lives. So I hope that's enough to get the conversation going in your groups. Have a great discussion. See you again next week.